All right, so we've got a fascinating topic on the docket today, one that I know you've been eager to unpack. Offshore companies, a world shrouded in mystique, often misunderstood, but clearly something you're ready to explore. You've sent over a stack of articles, excerpts from Nomad Capitalist, insights from Offshore Protection. It seems you're ready to go beyond the headlines and dive deep.
Absolutely, and it's that willingness to dig deeper that both sources really emphasize. You see, the word of offshore companies often gets painted with this brush of suspicion, this aura of shady dealings. But as both Nomad Capitalist and Offshore Protection make very clear, setting up offshore is entirely legal when done by the book. It's about understanding the rules of the game, not trying to circumvent them.
Right, so we're not talking about backroom deals and secret handshakes. This is about legitimate business strategy, about using the global framework to your advantage. But before we get into the how, let's define the what. When we talk about offshore companies, what exactly are we talking about?
At its core, an offshore company is simply a legal entity, but it's established in a country different from where you primarily reside. Think of it like opening a branch office, just on a global scale.
So if my main business is based in, say, California, but I choose to incorporate in the British Virgin Islands, for example, that would be considered going offshore.
Precisely. And here's where those myths we mentioned start to crumble. You see, major players think Apple, Google, Samsung. They've all utilized offshore structures as part of their business strategy. It's not about hiding money, it's about legitimate strategies, like optimizing taxes within a global framework.
Right, because everyone loves a good tax break as long as it's by the book.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that tax optimization isn't the only reason businesses choose to go offshore. Offshore companies can offer enhanced privacy thinking, protecting your secret sauce, your intellectual property, or accessing opportunities that might not be available in your home country. It's about expanding your toolkit, so to speak.
Okay, so it's about options, about having more tools at your disposal. Now, you mentioned something earlier that caught my attention, IBCs, international business companies. How do those differ from a regular offshore company?
An IBC is a specific type of offshore company that's designed to operate exclusively outside its country of incorporation. It's not about setting up shop in the Bahamas and selling souvenirs on the beach. It's about leveraging the benefits of that jurisdiction for international business dealings.
And one of those benefits being privacy, not in a hide the evidence kind of way, but more like protecting your company's competitive edge.
Precisely. But, and this is a big but that both sources emphasize, simply picking a country because it boasts zero taxes isn't a comprehensive strategy. There's more to it than that.
Right, because it's not as simple as setting up shop and watching the money roll in. Offshore protection actually uses the term holistic planning, which sounds a lot more involved. What does that really entail?
It means considering all the angles. There might be banking challenges, regulatory hurdles to navigate, and the jurisdiction you choose needs to align with your long-term goals. It's a strategic move, not a quick fix.
So it's about understanding the bigger picture. And speaking of pictures, both sources point out that this whole onshore versus offshore idea isn't just about physical location, right? There's more to it than just geography.
Exactly. It's about the legal framework. Offshore protection even mentions that places like the U.S., specifically Delaware, function as tax havens for some companies due to their specific corporate and tax laws. It's all about perspective.
Wow, that really flips the script. Suddenly going offshore feels less like following a treasure map and more like savvy business strategy.
Exactly. And to truly understand those strategies, we should take a closer look at some of the popular offshore jurisdictions. Each offers its own set of advantages.
All right, let's embark on a global tour then. What are some of the top contenders that caught your eye in the articles?
Let's start with the classic choice, the one that often springs to mind when people think offshore, the Caribbean.
Ah, yes, sun, sand, and tax advantages. What's not to love? Nomad Capitalist, in particular, dives into several island nations that have become havens for international businesses.
The British Virgin Islands, or BVI, is a prime example. It consistently ranks high on the list for ease of setting up a company, minimal paperwork, and relatively affordable fees. Plus, they offer a high level of privacy, ensuring your business dealings remain confidential.
Sounds pretty appealing, but what about the tax situation? I'm assuming that's a major draw for most.
You're right, and the BVI doesn't disappoint. No corporate tax, no income tax, no capital gains tax. It's a very attractive proposition for businesses looking to maximize their profits.
Okay, so we've got ease of setup and favorable tax laws. What else makes the BVI stand out?
It's also known for having a stable political and economic environment. which provides a certain level of comfort and security for investors.
Right, stability is key, especially in the often volatile world of international business. But I'm guessing the BVI isn't the only star in the Caribbean when it comes to offshore opportunities.
Not at all. If you're looking for that postcard-perfect lifestyle to complement your offshore endeavors, Bermuda might be right up your alley. Imagine this: 0% corporate tax, pristine beaches, and a potential pathway to residency.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. A little business, a little relaxation sounds like the perfect balance. But before I book my one-way ticket, what other Caribbean gems should we explore?
Antigua and Barbuda are known for their speed and efficiency. We're talking a remarkably fast setup process, as little as 1 day in some cases, along with attractive tax advantages and a strong commitment to privacy.
Wow, talk about streamlining. It's like the express lane for international business.
Precisely. And we can't forget about the Bahamas. They have a tax system that's music to an entrepreneur's ears. No taxes on corporate income, capital gains, or dividends. Plus, it's an English-speaking nation, so communication is seamless for many businesses.
The Bahamas definitely have a certain allure, but I'm curious, are there any potential drawbacks to consider with these Caribbean options?
That's a great question, and it's important to approach any offshore decision with a critical eye. While the Caribbean offers numerous benefits, there are a few things to keep in mind.
Okay, let's dive into that. What should our listeners be aware of?
Firstly, the perception of Caribbean tax havens has led to increased scrutiny from international organizations. While operating legally is paramount, this scrutiny can sometimes translate into more complex compliance procedures.
So it's not just about setting up shop, it's about staying compliant with evolving regulations. That makes sense. What else should we be mindful of?
Another consideration is the relative size and isolation of some of these islands. While beautiful and peaceful, this can sometimes pose logistical challenges for businesses that require a robust infrastructure or access to a larger workforce.
Right, those are important factors to consider. It's about finding the right fit for your specific needs. Now, we've explored the allure of the Caribbean, but I know there's a whole world out there beyond those idyllic islands. What other regions are on our radar?
You're absolutely right. The allure of palm trees and turquoise waters isn't for everyone. Let's shift gears and head over to Europe. It might surprise some listeners to find out that Europe has its own set of attractive offshore destinations.
Really? I always think of Europe as having high taxes, not being a haven from them. What's the story there?
That's a common misconception. It's a perfect example of why understanding the legal framework is more important than just looking at a map. Take Cyprus, for instance. It's part of the European Union, which gives businesses a certain level of prestige and access to that massive single market.
Right, being able to easily do business across the EU is a huge plus. But what about those tax advantages we've been talking about?
Cyprus has a corporate tax rate of 12.5%, significantly lower than many other EU countries. But here's where it gets interesting. They have zero tax on dividends, securities trading revenues, and profits from real estate sales abroad.
Okay, so with a little strategic planning, there's potential for some serious tax benefits. What other European gems are hidden in plain sight?
Georgia is an intriguing option that's gaining popularity. Nomad Capitalist highlights its incredibly business-friendly regulations, consistently ranking high in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index.
That's impressive. What makes Georgia so appealing from a business perspective?
They offer a variety of tax-friendly programs designed to attract foreign investors. Plus, they've streamlined the process of setting up and running a business, minimizing bureaucratic hurdles.
It sounds like they've gone out of their way to make it easy to do business there. Any other perks besides the business-friendly environment?
Georgia also has that appealing blend of East meets West culture, which can be attractive for entrepreneurs looking to immerse themselves in a new environment.
It's like getting a cultural experience along with your tax advantages. Okay, I'm adding Georgia to my list of places to research. What else have we got on our European tour?
We can't forget about the UK. Now, this might seem counterintuitive, considering its reputation for high taxes, but it offers some unique advantages, especially with structures like LRPs, limited liability partnerships.
LLPs. That's a new one for me. What exactly is an LLP, and how does it relate to offshore strategies?
An LLP is a type of partnership structure that offers flexibility and limited liability, similar to a corporation. The key here is that the UK, particularly for LLPs, has a 0% corporate tax rate on foreign-sourced income.
So if your business primarily operates outside the UK, you could see some serious tax benefits. That's fascinating. I would never have guessed that the UK would be a contender in the offshore world.
It highlights why it's so important to look beyond the surface and really understand the nuances of each jurisdiction's legal framework. And while we're on the topic of the UK, Scotland, still part of the UK, of course deserves a mention as well.
What makes Scotland stand out? Is it something to do with those legendary lochs and misty moors?
Perhaps the scenery is a bonus, but the real draw lies in its Scottish limited partnership LP structure. Much like the UK's LLPs, Scottish LPs benefit from a 0% tax rate on profits. Plus, they have a centuries-old legal framework that provides a sense of stability and reassurance for businesses.
I'm sensing a theme here. The older, the better when it comes to offshore jurisdictions. It's like historical significance adds another layer of appeal on top of the financial benefits.
It certainly seems to provide a sense of confidence for some investors. But, historical cloud aside, let's journey beyond Europe. There are still many fascinating corners of the globe to explore.
Lead the way. I'm ready for more. Where to next?
Let's set our sights on Panama. It's a name that often makes headlines, though not always for the most flattering reasons. However, putting those news flashes aside, Panama has a long-standing reputation as a prime offshore haven.
Yeah, Panama is definitely a name everyone's heard of, but not everyone understands why it's become synonymous with offshore business. What's the real story there?
Both nomad capitalist and offshore protection highlight Panama's strong privacy and asset protection laws. They offer a variety of company structures to choose from, making it adaptable to different business needs, and is known for being relatively easy to navigate the setup process.
So beginner-friendly and secure, got it. But what about everyone's favorite topic, taxes? How does Panama stack up?
Panama operates as a zero-tax jurisdiction for foreign-sourced income. No corporate tax, no income tax, no capital gains tax. Your earnings are essentially sheltered from taxation.
Music to an entrepreneur's ears, though I'm sensing a but coming. There's always a but, right? What's the catch with Panama?
You're right to be cautious. There's not necessarily a catch, but there are definitely factors to consider. Panama has faced increased scrutiny from international organizations in recent years, leading to stricter regulations, especially regarding banking.
So it's not about hiding money, it's about being smart and compliant with the rules of the game. What specifically has changed in Panama that our listeners should be aware of?
They've tightened their due diligence requirements for opening bank accounts, making it crucial to work with reputable institutions and ensure transparency in your financial dealings. It's not about making things difficult, it's about preventing illicit activities and maintaining Panama's integrity as a financial center.
Transparency and compliance, those are key takeaways for any offshore endeavor. So Panama is a solid option, but with a side of caution.
Got it. Where to next on our world tour of wealth building? Let's venture to the Middle East, to the UAE specifically. Now, the UAE has recently introduced a corporate tax, but it only applies to certain types of income. For many international businesses, there are still significant tax advantages to be had.
Interesting. I've always associated the UAE with innovation and luxury, not necessarily a place to avoid taxes. It seems like they're striking a balance between attracting foreign investment and generating revenue.
Precisely. And the UAE has a lot to offer beyond just tax benefits. It's a global business hub with a diverse economy and a very international population. Setting up a company there can also put you on a path to residency, which is a major draw for some entrepreneurs.
Oh, residency. Now that's a compelling perk. It's like taking your offshore strategy to the next level, not just financial benefits, but potentially a whole new lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of diverse opportunities, let's make our way over to Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong isn't what most people picture when they hear tax-having ships. They do have a corporate tax rate. However, it has a long-standing reputation as a fantastic place to do business, especially for those looking to tap into Asian markets.
Hong Kong is an economic powerhouse, that's for sure. What makes it stand out in the world of offshore companies? Is it just its strategic location?
Location is definitely a factor, but it's more than that. Nomad Capitalist points out that Hong Kong allows for 100% foreign ownership of companies, which isn't always the case in other countries, especially within Asia. They also have a very business-friendly environment, think streamlined regulations, ease of setting up bank accounts, and a culture that embraces entrepreneurship.
So it's about efficiency and accessibility. Got it. But we can't forget about taxes. Any breaks there that would sweeten the deal?
The corporate tax rate is relatively low, and they have a territorial tax system, meaning you're generally only taxed on income generated within Hong Kong. If your business primarily operates outside of Hong Kong, you could see some significant tax savings.
Okay, starting to see the appeal. It's like they've designed a system to attract international business while still maintaining a fair and transparent tax structure.
You've hit the nail on the head. Now, before we move on from our global tour, I think it's worth circling back to the Caribbean for one last stop, the Bahamas.
All right, I'm always up for a virtual beach vacation. What makes the Bahamas stand out from the other Caribbean nations we've discussed?
Well, aside from the obvious appeal of its natural beauty, the Bahamas boasts a tax system that's very favorable for both businesses and individuals. No corporate tax, no income tax, no capital gains tax. It's a haven for your hard-earned profits.
That's music to any entrepreneur's ears. But it's more than just tax breaks, right? There has to be more to the story than just paying less.
Absolutely. One of the key advantages of the Bahamas is its use of English as the official language, and the Bahamian dollar is pegged to the US dollar. This makes for a very easy transition, especially for businesses operating primarily in North America.
Right. Communication is key, and having a stable currency certainly minimizes risk. It's all about removing those barriers to entry. This has been an incredible global tour. We've covered so much ground. But I have to ask, with so many tempting options, how does anyone even begin to choose the right offshore jurisdiction for their needs?
That's the million-dollar question. Both Nomad Capitalist and Offshore Protection are very clear on this point. There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Of course. Just like there's no single best country, there's no one best offshore strategy. It all depends on your specific circumstances and goals.
Exactly. It's about aligning your choice of jurisdiction with your goals. Are you primarily looking for tax reduction, asset protection, business expansion? Each of these goals might lead you to a different corner of the world.
This is where it gets really interesting because both sources talk about this idea of having multiple flags, so to speak. It's like diversifying your portfolio, but on a global scale.
It's a fascinating concept called the multiple flag theory. Essentially, it's about reducing your reliance on any one country by diversifying your income streams, assets, and even your citizenship.
Okay, I'm all for multiple income streams, but multiple citizenships. That's a whole other level. It sounds like the ultimate form of freedom and flexibility.
Can be, but as with everything in the offshore world, it's not a decision to be taken lightly. It requires careful planning, a deep understanding of the legalities involved, and often the guidance of experienced professionals.
Right, we're not talking about DIY solutions here. This is where expert advice is absolutely crucial. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's bring it back to the heart of this deep dive offshore companies. You've given us an incredible overview of the landscape, but what are the key takeaways our listeners should keep in mind as they continue their own exploration of this world? So we've established that going offshore isn't a simple yes or no question. It's about finding the right fit for your goals, like a tailored suit for your business.
Precisely. And that's where those key takeaways come in. First and foremost, both Nomad Capitalist and Offshore Protection emphasize legality and compliance. This isn't about finding loopholes. It's about understanding the rules of the game and playing strategically.
Right, because nothing throws a wrench in your plans like a surprise audit. We're all about minimizing stress and maximizing success here. So, legality check. What else should our listeners be packing in their mental suitcase for this journey?
Well, we've spent a lot of time discussing tax advantages, and while those can be significant, it's important to remember that optimizing your tax burden is just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Exactly. It's not just about keeping more of your money. It's about what that allows you to do. It's about freedom, flexibility, building the life you envision.
I'm going to put it better myself. That's where aspects like asset protection, diversifying where your eggs are nestled, and even tapping into new markets come into play. Offshore companies can be a gateway to a whole world of opportunities that might not be so easily accessible back home.
It's like leveling up both financially and in terms of the possibilities open to you. We've covered a lot of ground today, and I'm sure our listeners are eager to dig into the specifics of what we've discussed. What would you recommend as their next step?
Both Nomad Capitalist and Offshore Protection are treasure troves of information on their websites, but they also emphasize the value of personalized advice. This isn't a one-size-fits-all scenario, and working with experienced professionals can make all the difference in navigating the complexities and ensuring your decisions are the best fit for your unique circumstances.
Absolutely. When in doubt, bring in an expert. It's like having a guide who knows the terrain, helping you navigate the ins and outs of the offshore world. Now, I've got to ask you, if you were to plant a few flags around the globe, where would you set up shop?
Oh, that's a question that sparks a new daydream every time I hear it. Honestly, it changes constantly. The beauty is in the exploration, finding new perspectives and possibilities. But if I had to choose, I'm always drawn to places that offer a balance, economic opportunity, but also a high quality of life, places where you can grow your wealth and enjoy the journey.
Now that's a philosophy I can get behind. Work hard, play hard, and do it all from a charming villa in Tuscany. Or maybe a
Ah,
beachside bungalow in the Caribbean. Or even a sleek penthouse in Dubai. The possibilities really are endless.
exactly. And that's what makes this such a captivating topic to delve into. It's about more than just finances. It's about designing a life that aligns with your values and aspirations.
It's been an incredible deep dive, and I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to chart their own course. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to make strategic decisions that move you closer to your goals.
Well said. And who knows, maybe one day we'll bump into each other at our virtual global headquarters, toasting to our successes.
Now that's a future I'm happy to work towards. Until next time, happy exploring, everyone, and remember, go where you're treated best.